Welcome. My name is Logan Simmons, and I will be covering today's case study that entails investing in diversity for Aetna. Here's a general overview of what will be covered in this presentation. I will begin with a position statement regarding the situation given, followed by an analysis of important points and short and long-term recommendations to be discussed. Last will be the summary, which will offer a general recap of the entirety of the situation at hand. Currently, Aetna, a diversified healthcare benefits company, is trying to minimize the losses it has experienced during the year 2008. Aetna's Chief Diversity Officer, Raymond Marcos, has been given the task of creating a presentation to give to the company's board of directors in order to convince them to preserve the diversity initiatives that have been implemented within Aetna. Raymond must create a presentation that would justify the existence of the company's diversity initiatives by highlighting cause and effect relationships between the diversity initiatives and business outcomes, while simultaneously depicting how continuing and implementing new diversity initiatives can further benefit the company. By making sure to cover these important components in his presentation, Aetna's board of directors will hopefully weigh in favor of preserving the diversity initiatives and continue to take advantage of what diversity has to offer for the business. 2008 was a year that an economic crisis took place on a global scale, and Aetna was no exception to the damage inflicted by the crisis. During Aetna's third quarter of 2008, they experienced a 39% drop in net income and a total of $232 million in net realized capital losses. While this net capital loss number is high, it was found that the primary reasons for Aetna experiencing these losses had to do with investments that had decreased in market value, as well as investments regarding debt securities, not with investing into things within the company, such as diversity initiatives. Despite the company's recent hardships, Aetna's leaders state with confidence that the company is still expected to generate more than $1 billion in excess capital during 2008. There does not seem to necessarily be an environment present at Aetna that would be indicative of any sort of panic, even with its recent misfortunes. Given the fact that the world is still undergoing an economic crisis at the time of this given scenario, one must question how Aetna can feel so comfortable with all the chaos going on around them. In essence, we must ask, how did Aetna arrive to its current state? First, we must look at the company's foundation, their values. Aetna prides itself on 4 core values: integrity, employee engagement, excellence and accountability, and quality service and value. Discontinuing diversity initiatives would put the company in direct violation of 2 of its core values. Aetna's value of integrity is rooted in doing the right things and behaving ethically. The issue emerges here when we focus upon the word ethically. It would not be ethical or right for the company to throw diversity out the window just because they are experiencing financial losses. Next would be Aetna's value of employee engagement, which directly emphasizes placing value upon diversity within the company. Discarding diversity programs would be in direct violation of the company value. Both of these value violations would put Aetna's company reputation at risk, potentially becoming viewed as an unethical, hypocritical company who goes back on their initial terms. Diversity has been a major factor to success for Aetna as it brings a multitude of perspectives to the table amongst employees and leaders, promoting improved decision-making throughout the company. With the help of diversity initiatives of Aetna's 35,000 employees, 31% are of color, 76% are women, 16% of supervisors are of color, and 64% of Aetna's employed supervisors are women. Aetna has already met some remarkable diversity milestones, and ever since beginning diversity initiatives, the company's total revenue has only been on the rise, bringing in $27.6 billion upon the completion of 2007, which could likely be attributed to the diversification of their workforce over time, enhancing their decision-making processes, productivity, and market outreach. Aetna has been involved in diversity ever since implementing their equal opportunity employment policy in 1963. 5 years later, in 1968, Aetna found itself on the bid board in the New York Stock Exchange for the first time. It was likely no coincidence that this happened shortly after Aetna implemented its new policy in 1963. From that point on, diversity had begun playing a bigger role in matters of business, not only for Aetna, but for companies around the world. It allows businesses to not only enhance their decision-making processes, but to also grow into new markets, just as Aetna did through their use of African American employee resource groups, which actually turned out to be successful in better understanding urban markets, an area of which they had previously struggled in. It's clear that a business can only prove to benefit itself by developing a diverse base of employees. Moving on, we have our short-term recommendations, which will have more to do with what Raymond can do with this presentation in order to convince his board of directors to continue supporting diversity initiatives within the company. With it being evident that diversity has always played a role throughout Aetna, he can focus on his LAMP framework in order to create a convincing pitch. He can begin with designing a logic diagram, which will enable him to display the effects of the investments made by Aetna into diversity initiatives. Next, using analytics and data, Raymond can provide relevant insights that can transform logic into easy-to-understand cause and effect relationships between diversity initiatives and business outcomes. For example, he can make a case that by Aetna encouraging an inclusive work culture, that employee productivity has risen as a result, referring to the improvement in sales made by employees at the time. This could be a crucial component to Raymond's pitch in order to justify preserving the company's diversity initiatives. Along with using data to prove a point, Raymond will need to set his sights upon creating a sense of value around logical and analytical standpoints regarding diversity developed earlier in the framework. Aetna prefers to use measures such as timelines, completeness, reliability, and consistency, all of which diversity has had a positive effect upon within the company. Therefore, Raymond can actually use this measurement criteria to support his presentation. Lastly, by going through the process of weighing the cost of diversity initiatives against business outcomes, Raymond and his fellow HR leaders could gain further credibility and appear more convincing in their presentation, as this adds even further value to diversity, a component that's been critical to Aetna's success since its early beginnings. Next, Raymond's presentation will need to involve bringing attention to the framework of the bigger picture at hand. Aetna's investments in diversity has allowed the company to better itself throughout its history. Without having made these investments, the company would likely not be in as comfortable of a position that they feel they're in right now while 2008 is coming to a close. Ultimately, Raymond will need to not only bring the positive results of diversity to the attention of his board of directors, but also the potential implications of what could happen should diversity initiatives be placed on the back burner, such as seeing profits plateau or even decline, and employee performance degrade. Another important point he will need to get across during his presentation is that damaging the reputation of the company and risking hypocrisy may not be the only negative outcomes of going against company values. Current and potential employees could begin to form a sense of distrust with Aetna and no longer desire to work with the company, meaning that Aetna could risk losing business relations with their consumer bases of different cultural backgrounds as well. In the bigger picture, diversity plays a key role in understanding markets, enabling employees to perform their best and more, bringing us back to the fact that diversity initiatives are going to be essential for Aetna's overall success for many years to come. Here are the long-term recommendations, which have more to do with what Aetna needs to do and pay attention to in order to remain successful in the future. At a bare minimum, the company must continue the diversity initiatives that they have already put into place in order to ensure that they do not risk potentially regressing in terms of company development. While these initial comes with a cost, the return on investment, ROI, is going to outweigh the initial cost of investment. Proof of this ROI has already been exhibited in the company's investments in its pre-existing diversity initiatives, as they have brought profitable growth, hiring and turnover savings, heightened employee satisfaction, improved employer and brand reputation, increased market shares and brand recognition, promotion of a strong brand as an industry leader, and more. It is evident that diversity initiatives have been causing positive impacts throughout the company, ranging from effects being seen in the enterprise-wide scale all the way down to smaller, local markets. It should be relatively easy to reach the conclusion that these initiatives should be placed high in value by Aetna, especially with what Raymond should be presenting to the board of directors in support of all of this. It is important to not only look at the past for answers, but to the future as well for Aetna. Aetna's Human Resource Department, along with Raymond, have an HR strategy prepared for the next couple of years that Aetna's board should be willing to listen to. This strategy plans to use integrated workforce management to further the success of the company while being responsible for advancement of a diverse, high-performance workforce to continue Aetna's industry leadership. This plan ultimately seeks to have HR continue to collaborate with the company in order to implement new and pre-existing diversity initiatives, allowing the business to continue driving forth profitable growth for themselves and continue to set themselves up for success. By listening closely to their HR department plans, Aetna can further solidify their place as leader of their industry through maximizing diversity within their company. As we come to a close, let's wrap things up with a summary of all of what's occurred. In order to preserve and continue to be able to develop new diversity initiatives at Aetna, Raymond's presentation must feature content that can express cause and effect relationships between diversity initiatives and business results, execute his LAMP framework in order to create a convincing, thorough pitch, and bring to the board's attention what risks the company may take on if they decide to not continue to support implementation of diversity initiatives. Lastly, Aetna must continue to take advantage of the tools that it already has at its disposal. Diversity has proven to be extremely beneficial for the company over a wide range of years, and will likely continue to do so for many more to come. Aetna must be prepared to continue to invest in its diversity initiatives in order to maximize its profitable growth, setting themselves up for continued success for many years to come. That will conclude my presentation. Thank you for your time.